Hey, bonjour, bonjour. Welcome in a new episode of Soulpunk TV. And today I have the immense pleasure to have my first international interview with Love
Yay!
Manifest. Yeah, it's an honor, seriously. How are you doing?
For me as well, yeah. I'm great. I'm really good, you
Yeah,
know? It's a wonderful day here. The snow is finally melting a bit and the sun is out and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to do this. This is the first time, I've had an opportunity to co-create with someone else and it's definitely something, that I've been calling in for a while now. So thank you. Thank you so much.
that's so cool. And also the way we met was quite interesting. So we may touch upon that a
Yeah.
little bit. But first, I like to ask this. The first question is, how do you introduce yourself in general in a very short, if you have very small time, you meet someone new and you're not sure if that person is into spirituality, you know what I mean? Like you're in a mundane setting, how do you introduce
You know,
yourself?
that's a really tough question actually because it's something I talk to my son about a lot, which is know your audience. And we all wear different hats and roles, and we all are in different frequencies depending on what's being asked of us at any given point in the day. So I think that would vary quite wildly. I just in general, like as far as my as far as like my social media and like how am I stepping forward in that realm, or how would I like to be known or what am I stepping into? I'm a highly sensitive person, an empath, an energy intuitive. I'm what I call an integrated channel. So I've always been a channel. I don't need to leave my body in order to receive channeled messages. Now, I will preface that in order to get like more deeply channeled messages, I do have to go into a meditative state. So I'm not always, you know, um, able to be integrated.
Mm.
But yeah, like I'm so many things, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. I'm so many things on this human journey, and I also have a rare connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it impacts like 1 in 100,000 people. It's been a big part of my journey. So I think I also, am an advocate for people with invisible illness, disability, people that are born uniquely abled. My 9-year-old son also has the same condition and features of autism spectrum disorder. So I'm a a big proponent of just owning who you are and your unique aspect of your fractal self. So I do a lot with poetry. I'm a mystic poet. So I guess ask me in any one moment and you'll probably get a different answer.
That's amazing. That's great. So my second question would be, how do you introduce yourself to people who are into spirituality? But I guess it's almost the same. You're very honest and
Yeah.
very transparent in your.
Yeah, I guess with people that are, like, if it's like my son's, parent, like if I'm in a parent group or something, or if it's, like more matrixy, like as we'd say, it's just like I tell people that I'm intuitive. I'll say stuff like, this might be a little woo-woo for you, but I'm, kind of psychic. And a lot of people can kind of vibe on the level that I'm an author and a writer and I do poetry. That's pretty mellow for people. So that I guess to flip it, invert it around, that would probably be the way that I introduce myself to the in general to people that I'm not haven't really felt out yet how open they are,
Mm.
or I guess where they're at, because we're all on a journey of expansion and awakening. It's just we're all at different mile markers on that. So
Amazing, amazing. I would like to know, when have you always been like that? Always been an integrated channel, connected since as long as you remember, or?
yeah, I didn't know it, right? So I remember when I was 10 years old. I wrote this poem, and it was called Ballooning, and it was about an experience in a hot air balloon. And it was talking about my soul and the journey of my soul. And it was definitely probably like one of the first pieces of channeled poetry, because I channel mystic poetry from my higher self, who's named Rhea, and the angelic realm. And my mom saw it, and she entered it in a poetry competition for adults, and it won. And I got in the newspaper, and I just always was writing. Yeah, it was this validation that, it was just always who I was. And then I briefly touched on in one of my last videos, and I have not spoken about this publicly, but, fast forward, 20 some years, and I had an experience that really changed things for me forever. And, that's where I had a prophetic dream in which I was murdered. And I woke up that day knowing that this dream was prophetic and that I needed to warn someone, but I didn't know who. And I thought to call the women in my family, because I'm a survivor of abuse, and typically when you as a woman that's gone through that, when you think of those kind of things, you think, oh, like that a female might be in danger. And unfortunately, about a day later, a close family member, my cousin, who was like a brother to me, he was shot and murdered by kind of like a serial killer in the making. And that changed everything for me forever. Prior to that, I wasn't really, I guess I was aware that things were coming through me. I was aware that I was going into a different like state of consciousness when I was writing these, journal entries or these poems, but I wasn't really like owning that I had abilities beyond that. Yes. So.
And I've read about that story. I heard you telling it publicly very recently, and that's very moving, I guess. I noticed as well in your in what you share publicly on your channel that you seems to have a pretty good interaction with the other side. I mean, from those who have passed away.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that. So I was, I've been channeling, like I said, since a small child. As a small child, actually, I could physically see spirits. And I was raised heavily Catholic. I was indoctrinated into that, went to a private Catholic school, church 3 times a week. My mom was in the church choir, so it was like every time I would have these interactions. And I mean, I grew up in a very extremely haunted house, an old Victorian haunted house with like secret rooms, and there was like someone
the cliche.
Like, like what you see in every American horror film. That was my childhood. God. Yeah. And so I would like have these intense experiences, and I'd go tell my parents, and they were like, "Oh, you were just dreaming." And I also had this imaginary friend, and his name was Juby, and he like was a slave, and I could describe like what his garments looked like. And come to find out years later, I was connecting with him in what was the slave quarters of the home I was living in, and I believe him to be an actual a human, that I was not someone imaginary. But so I was having these I was always having these experiences, but they were kind of like programmed out of me. But then, so like March of last year, I had begun, I should preface that to say, I'd begun stepping into this role of like channeling messages and bringing it forward and doing the mystic poetry. But I still wasn't really confident with a lot of that, because I think as a channel, you kind of doubt yourself. You there's a phase you go through where it's like, am I really connecting? Am I making this up? Like, is this real? Is this my ego? Like, you go through this phase where you kind of doubt your abilities. But I had this experience where I came into contact with the Law of One material. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Through the group we met on Facebook, Brian Scott, he speculated
That is
that.
actually how I ended up in the group from Brian Scott, not from the material, but his links were mixed in with all this Law of One stuff. Whoa. It was actually my partner, my husband, my ascension partner. Him and I are, what I guess the old template would be like a twin flame connection. And so quite often he has been the catalyst for me in my journey, and he brought it to my attention, and then that took me on my own trail. And as soon as I came into contact with the material, it was like everything changed. And I started in my meditations, I thought, okay, I want to make contact with intelligent infinity. I'm going to reach out to the Brotherhood of Sorrow. This seems true. It was like the first thing I'd ever really come into contact with in all of my spiritual journeying that really seemed true. Like it was my truth. Amazing. And when I did that, all of a sudden I started getting these like intense downloads, and there were these schematics and these visions, and I didn't understand them. And it was like toroidal fields and quantum physics, and I was taken up into like the black hole, and I was shown like how everything worked and how we were basically like these little specks of dust. And it was like everything was just blown open. And at a certain point they came forward and said, we're the Terra group.
Yeah.
And that's when I understood that Luke, my deceased loved one, who I'd had this prophetic dream about, who I'd spent 10 years feeling, in this grieving desert period, feeling responsible for his death, was actually my link into the Terra group and why I'm able to do what I'm doing in this now moment.
Wow.
And it was like everything just like kind of came together.
Wow.
And especially when I started realizing, when I put out that first, it was a really big deal for me to put out this, that video, the tethering video, yes. Untethered.
So
I was like,
if I may, I just want to, because for people who are not familiar with your work.
Yes, so, please. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a link in the description in the first comment as well, because so what you do is like you have those schematics, as you said, like you draw this occult anatomy of the human field and how it relates to the planetaries and everything. So it's fascinating. Just for people who are not familiar, that's what you refers to.
Yeah, well, I can give you like the tiniest breakdown of it. So
that would have been my next question, actually. Say, what is your current work and?
Yeah, so what they showed me was that we are a toroidal field. We are this, and I'm still getting information like daily. And at some point, this is going to end up in a book, but it's a lot of information, as and trying to disseminate it. But we are these toroidal fields, and it's made up of our energy meridians, what is commonly known as our chakras, our energy centers. And those energy centers are linked energetically to the planets, to each planet in the solar system. And each planet in the solar system, right, is its own consciousness. It has its own grid. It has its own consciousness. It is a living being. And within that consciousness are social memory complexes, just like we are moving into, as a human species, into a state where we will at some point become just a social memory complex when we're rooted in the fifth dimension.
Yeah. So for people who are not familiar as well with the concept of social memory complexes, can you summarize that a little bit? What is a social memory complex?
So, a social memory complex is like once you've advanced past a certain point in your evolution, no matter what species you are. And we can actually see this, like even in our insect species here on planet Earth. I think like the easiest way to kind of understand it is like a hive mind, that would be like a lower aspect of it, if you're trying to understand it. But it is when the species becomes one. It's one energy. It's one thought. It's going from separateness to unity. And you no longer need to express yourself. You still have your individuality, but you have access to everyone else's thoughts, everyone else's feelings, everyone else's experience. It's, if we think of God as the experience of all, right? It's the next step in our evolution in moving back towards source. So it's the next step in our evolution of going from separateness to oneness.
That's really funny, because even since I was a young child, I had this intuition that would be heaven. Like, because I was raised in a fundamentalist Christian cult, which are Jehovah's Witnesses, where heaven is on earth. And that would be, because I was fascinated by science fiction and everything, I understood that would be the next level. It's like we are all individuated in bodies and mind and personality, but we would have been able to communicate with each other in a transparent way and in a harmonious way.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, how many times in your life have you been trying to, like, there's that miscommunication in the heart space, and someone just completely misunderstands your intention or where you're coming from, and you just wish you could give them your experience, give them your eyes, give them your feelings. That's what a social memory complex is. It's that ability to give over your individual experience of your unique blueprint to the other aspect of you. And that is just so exciting. And it's exciting to know, like, that's where we're moving towards,
Do you think that the Terra groups and all the other groups that are actively assisting humanity evolutions would be actually training us? Like, I'm a baby channel. Like, I'm not as developed as you are, but I feel like those downloads, uploads, communications, would they actually teach us how to do the same for in between human beings eventually?
Well, yeah. And so that's what's so unique about my channel, is that, many people channel extraterrestrial, what you call extraterrestrial or extra dimensional frequencies. The Terra group is here on Earth. Okay. They are the fifth dimensional aspect of us. And, they're experiencing fifth dimensional consciousness on Earth, holding the grid for Gaia, for Mother Earth, in a fifth dimensional reality, because the Earth actually is a fifth dimensional being.
Okay.
We're the fourth dimensional humans on a fifth dimensional planet. So I believe that is exactly what the Terra group is doing. They're assisting us. They're harvesting us. They're pulling us right into their frequency, and they're helping us integrate and assimilate these, ideas and new templates is what this is all about now.
It speaks to me a lot, even from practices I'm doing from other traditions and every other stuff. Like, there is this roots of being guided by higher beings. And I just wanted to ask you, for people who are not familiar as well with the concept of dimensions. So I'm immersed in the New Age, so like third, fourth, five. Speak to me a little bit, but can you summarize in your paradigm, what does that mean? Please.
Yeah, sure. And I actually did a video on this quite a while ago when the whole game of pandemic began, and explained that this was all happening for a reason. Basically, all a dimension is a point of perception, right? So, like third dimension or 3D, is it's dual. Right? It's opposing forces. It's, right, wrong, good, bad, black, white. It is a dualistic paradigm. Okay. And it's separateness. That it is, the easiest way to think of 3D consciousness is that we are separate, everything's separate. It's, there's a good way of doing it and a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it, and it's based on that, and that served us, right? That served us in our evolution, but it's very punitively based. Okay, it's like it's very much based on karma and needing lower vibrational experience in order to expand. Okay, and that's done what it's meant to do. But now it's time for us to move into a fourth dimensional reality. And again, that's just a shift in consciousness. I believe we're already in the 4D.
So what is the 4D? Because it's not really spoken about. People speak a lot about 3D and 5D, but not that much about
that is one thing I've never understood. It's like everyone just was so anxious to get to 5D.
Right.
They like skip over 4D altogether. And you hear people talk about 4D as the bridge. But I'm like, even if, there is no such thing as linear time, if you look at the evolution of any human species, yeah, you've got this hypothesis of jumps, where you're making a jump, but it's not, you're not going to skip like thousands of years of evolution, like just like that. And that's what I feel like people are doing. They're so anxious to get to this heaven on earth experience that they're just completely skipping over 4D altogether. And now understand, you can be in a fifth dimensional consciousness and living in a third dimensional planet, right? Or a third dimensional collective consciousness. So you can be in the 5D right now because it's just a point of perception. It's just the way you view the reality that you're creating.
Nice.
And so fourth dimensional consciousness still has polarity. Okay, it still is a dualistic consciousness, especially in the lower 4.0 dominant resonant frequency. So the whole idea with this game of pandemic was to push people from their dominant resonant frequency from the lower I should say the higher third dimensional perspective to a minimum of a 4.0. And we just needed 51% of the collective consciousness to have a dominant resonant frequency of a 4.0. And that would just pull everybody into it. Okay. So you still have this idea of a dualistic society. However, it just takes on a spiritual connotation. So now we're moving into a state where it's more about, they're woke. They're not woke.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's more about now we're judging other people based on the spiritual journey. It's like, that's their ego. They're narcissistic. It's now we are going through that phase collectively in our spiritual journey where we think that we still are judging ourselves as separate because we think that we are better than or less than. And so you are seeing this play out on the world stage. You've been seeing this play out all through 2020 where you've got this, what I call virtue signaling. That is like so clear that for me was like, yep, we've hit the fourth, dimensional. It's like, if you cared about someone else, you would put on the mask. And I have a mask, therefore I care, and you do not. It's like all this virtue signaling, this martyrdom, this we need to sacrifice for the greater good. This is all clearly fourth dimensional reality. And so I no longer say we're in a 3D reality. To me, we've been in a 4D, and we stepped through that gateway for sure on 12/21.
Wow, amazing. And so fifth dimension, the last one?
Fifth dimension. There's definitely more than that. But fifth dimensional consciousness which is like, I think for the spiritual community, or if you're in the spiritual community, is like what everybody is like. It's like, candy to a baby. It's like what everybody wants to talk about is like fifth dimensional consciousness is unity. It's known as what's unity consciousness. So it's not dualistic any longer. So we've now moved into a space of neutrality. We don't judge anything as good or bad or right or wrong. It's really reaching a space where you can receive anything and anyone, any circumstance in a space of unity, wholeness, and there is no separateness any longer. And in fifth dimensional consciousness is when you can then shift into more of a crystalline energy. So you can choose whether to be in physical body or not. Now, I have a little bit of a different take on that. I believe that the human species has decided to, because a lot of people talk about 5D as our bodies are gone. Like we don't have avatars anymore. I am getting the feeling from what I'm channeling that we are actually choosing to do a 5D experience in physically. Avatar form.
Oh yeah.
Now I do think we're moving to more crystalline matter. But I do think we're going to be, I don't know if we're going to be the first, because there's, infinite, timelines and everything else. But I do feel like for me, that seems like where we're headed.
It speaks to me a lot because I'm a huge advocate of physical immortality and through means of whatever means, because I really feel that this is the next step for human species. It's like, how can you imagine the human species to grow up, to move out of his infancy if its elements lives only less than 1 century compared to the other species in the galaxy that may live thousands of years. And also because so I want to summarize your 3D, 4D and 5D explanation. There is something, you tell me if that sounds true from what I understand. It seems to me that moving the step from to 5 dimension is actually stepping out of survival, because what you say in 3 dimension is like we're driven by the ego, by the acceptance of the tribe. And so it's like, I might die if I don't subscribe to the tribe and to the rules and the punishment. 4-dimension consciousness, like, I am awake and I need to awake everybody, otherwise we may die. Yes. So there is still this fear of survival. And 5th-dimensional consciousness is all is well. I am the divine incarnated, and everything is here to be included in my love, including 4D and 3D representation, reflections of myself.
Absolutely. And, that really resonates for me, because the work that, the Terra group has really been, hot on is this whole idea right now. The work that we're doing as a collective is shedding the automaton within. And, and moving from a survival state to a thriving space. So that makes sense to me.
The automaton is the ego, is the machine that wants to keep us alive.
Yeah, we are like, we're human tech. We have technology, running through us. And, one of the things I talked about in my last channeled messages was that, the brain, we're these higher dimensional beings, and we're put into these avatars, and it has this brain, and the brain was designed to keep us alive. Yes. Right? It was to keep, that's what its function was. And we were only given a small, little piece of it. We only use a small portion of it. And that tells you how much further we have to go, in our consciousness, right? But it initially, that's what it was intended for. But we've surpassed that now. Okay, we're no longer out in the wilderness running from a bear, sourcing fresh water, looking for ways every day to survive, where you did need this program to go, nope, I'm not going to go down that trail, because if I do, I remember this is what happened to me last time. It saved your life. But we've surpassed that in our evolution now. So now it becomes, how do we drop the program of the survival brain, of the reptilian brain, and turn the boat in the direction of thriving? How do we create a new template for the brain? Because when you begin to observe the brain as an organ, as a function, and as a software program, and you really step out and you observe it, you start realizing that it's really stuck in the past.
Yes.
And it's bored as hell, right? It is, all it wants to do is like solve a problem, because there's nothing for it to do anymore. And so it'll just create anything to solve it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, it wants something to do. It's bored. It's like, I've got food, I have water, I have shelter, I'm safe, like the basic human needs are met, like no one's chasing me anymore. How do I start this program and keep it running? And so when I really started observing the brain, I realized that number one, it's based in the past. And number two, all it's doing is just regurgitating snippets of conversations, things that you picked up in your environment. Like, it's not everything that we think it is. And so shedding that automaton, right? It's this idea that we are already controlled. Like, there's a lot of talk about, we're being controlled, and, the Matrix is controlling us. Yeah, that's happening, and no one needs to do anything for it to happen because we're doing it to ourselves. This idea that I woke up with a couple weeks ago, I was like channeling all night long, and my team left me with this like, dum, dum, dum. There is no original thought left, period. End of story. Because we are so controlled by this automaton energy. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, it's all just paradigms and, thought forms and pendulums and constructs. Where is the original thought? It's gone.
Yeah. So what you mean basically is that the root cause of overthinking, which is such an epidemic, the Western civilization, is rooted actually in the fact that our brain is programmed for an environment which is not here anymore.
Exactly.
All right. So
a reality which no longer exists in the illusion of this collective reality.
Absolutely.
So now we need to get it up to speed. And that's the work that we're doing. And that coincides directly with what you just said about the fourth and the fifth dimension and moving from surviving to thriving.
Mm-hmm. And so that's I can relate 100% because this is my journey, and so this is yours, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching here right now, they can relate 100%. What would be your predicament, your practice, your I would say your how do you update your brain?
How do I update it?
Mm-hmm. How would you recommend anyone to start this practice of say I'm ready to upgrade my brain?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I would work on, and this sounds really simple, and it's not. And I've been doing it for several years now, and it's just this idea of catching yourself if you are in thought of any kind of thought, and challenging that thought. Is this real? What am I believing? What is the story I'm telling myself? Am I in the now? It is just this constant practice of mine where I'm constantly I'm now able to catch myself in thought. In the beginning, you'll go days before you realize that you're running on an autopilot. I get up, I brush the teeth, I drink the coffee, I change the clothes, I put on the deodorant, and it's like, it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you're like, how did I get here? How many times have you been driving and you're just like, you drove and you parked in your parking space at work and you don't even remember the drive, because so much of our lives is built around just letting the program run, just letting it run. So I think the first thing you could do, and one little trick of that is like in the beginning, you could set an alarm, right? We all have these alarms on our phones. Just set an alarm for several times a day.
I did that for reality check as well to practice lucid dreaming, and it works for awareness training. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I'm definitely trying to be more of the architect in the dream world as well. But yeah, I would definitely say that is probably the most profound thing, that you could do. Another thing is just like free writing in the morning. That's something I've been doing religiously now for about 10 months. And that really does, understanding that this is a script and you can change that script and you have the power to do that. And your word and, something about connecting the brain, the thought and putting that onto paper really helps solidify and manifest that into your reality.
Yes. Oh, yes.
The other thing I would really recommend is just taking a few moments when you wake up in the morning and really get into a feeling of how you want to feel that day. Like get into the feeling of what you want that day to feel like, and start directing your reality, start directing the brain on giving it the thoughts to think. And you'll see that all you have to do is give it a little bit of, a nudge, and it'll slip into a thought stream, and it will give you what you're asking, it to do.
Amazing. Also, the practice, those practices, and the practice of meditation as well, is just learning how to identify with the observer and not with the experience itself. And
absolutely, I meditate twice a day.
Yeah, I find it extremely useful as well. Tell me. Yeah,
you can't dismiss it. Everybody tries to. Everybody, you go through that phase where you're like, I don't know what it is about the human and the ego. Like, we think we don't need to do it, and you do. Yeah. It's like one of those things that I resisted for so long. I really did. And once I started doing it every single day, I was like, what was I so afraid of?
Amazing. Yeah, of course. We're going to shift the conversation in a little direction, but I'm going to do a bridge.
I'm ready.
So when we do those practice of upgrading our brain, so we can, tell me if you relate. It's like, it feels like this planet, especially since 2020, we are like in a huge jar being shaken in order for us to awaken. It's like all those, because someone that I didn't say is like, you're very much knowledgeable, which even an expert in terms of astrology, in terms of those cosmic realms, planetary bodies, how they interact with us. And it feels to me that we're shifting into some vibrations. We are kind of forcing us to wake up to those realities. And a lot more, I'm meeting more and more people who never been spiritual or meditative or whatever, and they just start out of the blue to say, I felt compelled to that. I'm learning about the law of attraction, learning about spirituality, guides, whatever, and it's all new for me. And is this something you can relate? This wave of awakening?
I definitely think, this is, I know it's been like, now it's been kind of watered down and become mainstream, but this whole idea of like the Great Awakening, absolutely. And I believe that's in part, well, it's all because of, the light workers and the grid holders and the star seeds and the wanderers and, all of these people who have been holding these higher dominant resonant frequencies since, we really started hearing a lot about this in 2012. Where this like event was going to happen, and everyone keeps looking for this like external like thing is going to happen. And and it's like the green mist and like whatever. But I've always said it's not going to be like an external event. This is an inside out kind of job. But what that did, everything happens for a reason. What that did was create a group of individuals that were like the lighthouse. And they were pulling their soul groups up in frequency, up into the next dimension. And once that shift happened, like I said, you just needed that 51% of the collective. Once that 51% tipped, we had that tipping point, it now is forcing everyone else to come. We're literally magnetically, remember these toroidal fields, like we are pulling the rest of the collective. And so you're going to just continue to see this. And it's like I said, the whole game of pandemic really forced people into dark night of the soul energy, awakening energy. It's like typically if you talk to anybody on their spiritual journey, there is some mega traumatic thing that happened indicative of 3D reality, something major. Some shit has to go down before you finally wake up, Yeah. And so that event, this whole idea of pandemic, it was a catalyst.
Oh yeah.
For this great awakening, in my opinion.
Oh no, like with my friends, with the soul punks, when we gather in my apartment and we do those meditation together, we feel that we have upgraded so much. Because everybody is so in need of human connection. So when we do that consciously, we do it for the collective unconscious. And so we become wider channels for those exchanges of energy. I would say conscious, deliberate channels.
Yes, exactly. It's like I've said before, if you imagine a grid and you imagine, like light bulbs on, if every soul is a light bulb, it's like once one comes up, then that connects to the next grid and the next grid, and we're lighting
Oh
everybody
yeah.
up, and people dismiss the power that they have. It's they really even awaken people, even myself. I'm just now beginning to realize, like, what a powerful creator I actually am. And we really shouldn't diminish what we are doing energetically for the collective consciousness. But again, that's moving from this idea of human doing to human being. And 3D again is all about like physical efforting and needing to trying to influence the mirror versus influence
Yes.
yourself. And that, for me, one of the biggest shifts for me when I became diagnosed with EDS, I was given until I was 40 to live. And I deteriorated like really, really rapidly because I was trying to like get back to where I was. Like all I cared about was like being this efforting human again. I just wanted to be physically able, and I wanted to get back to the job I was doing, and all of my energy went trying to go backwards. And it wasn't until yes. Yeah, and I nearly killed myself. I got to a point where I tried to take my own life. I didn't want to live anymore, because that was all that it was. It was trying to go back into a template that no longer existed, because in our society, that's all we valued was the human and what it could effort for us, what it could give to us by way of its efforting. And it wasn't until I made that shift of a human efforting, a human doing to a human being, and gave that just as much value, that really things started to shift and awaken in me. And I do think that's also one of the positive side effects of this whole game of pandemic, is that people have been forced to not to look at their mortality, number one, because death is so sanitized around the globe, especially in Western society. It's like we don't talk about death.
It's all about it, yeah.
It's all about like beauty and anti-aging and anti-everything, because we're so obsessed with this idea of youth. It's like there is no death, but it also forced everybody to acknowledge their vulnerability and their humanness, and that anybody can get sick, right? Anybody, nobody, no one person, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter the prestige of your job, right? Anyone has the capacity to catch a virus. And we had to start looking at like the doing wasn't necessarily all it was cracked up to be. So I look at now the collective and I go, yep, went through that a decade ago. Not fun.
So yeah, what you say is like you had these, either I die, either I change, either I change who I think I am. And this is what the whole planet is going through. We can't go back ever. Ever. It's
ego
done.
death.
That's an ego death. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like my story. My story is dead. I need to create a new one, which is more useful to interact in a harmonious way with my new reality.
Yeah, reinventions, renaissance. That is the age of Aquarius. That is what we just stepped into. It's like no matter where we go in this discussion, it all comes back around. It all works in this, cohesive, symphonic, beautiful blueprint, and everything is happening for a reason. It's just sometimes it takes us a while to pick it all apart and tease it out and figure, okay, how do all these tethers make this tapestry,
Nice. I wanted to talk exactly about this. So the grid you're referring to, at some point I was a bit confused. You speak about the grid of kind of souls that awaken each other's. But at some point I also think that we're speaking about the grid over the planet to help for the ascension. Well, there are two different things.
So as far as the collective consciousness, or
I don't know,
the planetary?
Yeah, planetary grid. So I thought you were speaking about this.
So really, the grid, if we're talking about it in a grid, it also is a collective consciousness. So it's kind of like, I wonder if I have, hold on, maybe I have it.
You got some your drawings?
Yeah, I've got some of my drawings.
Nice. You have to look at that, guys. People who are watching the interview, they need to look at your drawings.
Yeah,
They're interesting,
yeah,
really
yeah. I
fascinating.
don't know if you like if you can see like
Oh yeah,
even see this really. But like, okay, so here's a human standing
mhm.
on the earth, and we're sovereign, we're sovereign beings, and we're connected here into all the planetary bodies. But here is this grid, it's this consciousness. It's all of the humans
Mm.
consciousness as one. And that is what the collective consciousness is. So the Earth has been a fifth dimensional planet, and we've been running in a third dimensional consciousness. You can think of it like this cloud or this, this energy. And that is every single human being on the planet, their thoughts, ideas, beliefs. But then the grid beyond that, or the alternative space, right,
Mm.
is where every possible reality is happening, so it's like it's all one thing, but it's kind of
Different.
separate.
That would have been my
I don't.
question as well. It's like so there are people who are either riding the current of those new energies pushing us to awakening, and there are some who are like resisting. Do you think we're moving? If I open myself to those energy and I say yes, I'm riding the current, do I shift timeline, or are we all binded together to the same timeline? What's your take on
Okay,
that?
so now I think I get where you're going with this. So the way I understand it from the
Mm.
concept of tethering, and you guys will you're gonna link the stuff so they can see the video.
Oh yeah, sure.
But okay, so here is what
Yes,
it
this
is.
one.
So yeah, so essentially this is you, okay? And this is the idea that your energy is tapped into every planetary body, okay? And this makes up your individual blueprint. So it's this big toroidal field. So this toroidal field is happening for you individually, if I shrink this down. And then this exact same thing is happening for the collective.
For
There's
the
another
planet.
toroidal field, right? And so that exists on a bandwidth, on a spectrum. So if you think of like, I wish I had like a cord or a string, but if you imagine like a string,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and that string actually is many different little tiny strings
Mm.
kind of like wound
Yes.
together. So each cord that you're corded into, the sun, the moon, Venus, it is a bandwidth, and you get to choose what the lowest to the highest aspect of that energy
Mm.
tether.
Wow.
Okay, so that is what tethering is. It's tapping into the higher aspect of that frequency. Now we all have free will, we have choice. So you can choose if you want to stay on the lower bandwidth, or you can choose to heal and transmute that and tap into the higher bandwidth of that energy cord. And so
That's
what
amazing.
happened, yeah, so what happened on 12/21 is that we were gifted, right? This portal opened, and we were gifted with brand new cords and tethers, because our collective consciousness now, this whole, all of this moved into a fourth dimensional consciousness. And with that came the gift of a higher spectrum.
And this is exactly the work you're doing at the moment with the
This
quantum
is, yes.
tarot and with can you just give a little bit introduction to tease the viewers
Yeah, I'm
to know
so
more?
excited. Okay.
Yes, me
Yeah,
too.
this is really exciting. I don't know, but I don't believe it's ever been done before, because tethering is kind of like my little creation that was given to me by the tarot group, and quantum tarot is something that we've been working on. So I've only published one video, but there's two more coming out. So I've
Ooh.
recorded two more, so they'll be coming out in the next couple days. So what the idea is, okay, so like I said, each planet, we're corded into that. And what the work of tethering is, it's learning to let go of the lower aspects of that cord and tether and tap into a new program, a new template, new gift,
Mm.
right? Totally
Oh.
new
Mm.
realities, paradigms. We're creating it now. We are creating it. And so what I'm doing with quantum tarot is I'm saying, okay, spirit, what what planet wants to come through, okay, on their grid, and what tethers can we be working on right now? What tethers can we get rid of, and what tethers can we tap into? So what they've shown me is that okay, so if you think of this is kind of, that's why I think I'm doing quantum tarot. It's kind of like to narrow this down into like little bite-sized chunks that people can really integrate, because it's even a lot for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm trying to explain the whole entire universe like in a 50-minute video, and I can't take credit for any of this. It's all come, you know, it's come through me. But so the idea with tethering is to learn how to transmute the lower vibrational tethers and latch on to higher vibrational tethers. So the sun, okay, is kind of like, and this might be triggering for some people, okay, is kind of like the god of our universe, okay? She is the main consciousness that birthed the rest of the planet.
Consciousness, yeah.
Yes. And she or he or it is tied to the black hole Sagittarius A. And what they showed me is that on the other side of that is another sun and another sun and another sun, and you know, and it goes and it goes and it goes. So this sun, it was its idea to manifest as our universe, okay? And so the different planetary bodies are aspects of the sun, and we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. So it is going to have its own grid, each planet, and we are going to have our own grid, and we are tapped into it. So it's kind of like the sun's different aspects of its personality are the different planetary bodies, and each planetary grid has its own race of people, things like I just recently tapped into Mercury, and it's a race of angelic beings, 7th dimensional angelic beings, right?
Exciting.
And so with quantum tarot, we're trying to like whittle this all down, and I'm just pulling from a hat, like, okay, what planet wants to talk to us today? What grid wants to speak to us? Yeah. And then I'm doing lower vibrational tethers, and I'm saying, okay, hey, Mr. Grid, tell us, where can we get rid of these lower things, and how can we latch onto something higher? And with that, what gifts are going to then, you know, become available to us? And in doing that, we're moving through the process of third to fourth to fifth dimensional. So it's just kind of like an evolutionary tool.
Yeah, while learning how to have a communication with the whole universe. Which is beautiful. I'm really excited by your work, and we're gonna wrap it now. Like we'll be talking for 50 minutes, and I really encourage.
Have we really? I guess we should do like a part 2, right?
And I have so many questions actually, and so many things I can relate, and we can speak for hours. I'm pretty sure.
I really could. I love talking about this. I'm so passionate about it. You know.
Well, you know, if people comment and say that we want part 2, we're gonna do part 2. I would be really excited. I love that. But at the same time, so I'm gonna put the link of your YouTube channel on the description and on the comments. Where can people find you as well?
Okay, so definitely the YouTube channel, and like I said, I'm a little baby channel. I'm just getting started. So I'd love, you know, if you guys would connect with me there. I also have a Facebook blog, and sometimes like today, I'll just get like little channeled messages, like little snippets of things, and I'll just put it on the Facebook blog. So you can find me there. You can search Love Manifest.
I'm gonna give you the link. Yeah.
Okay, or at Beautiful Beings of Light. And then I'm also on MeWe, and I've got like a really like a small presence on Instagram. It's mostly just the poetry.
Yeah.
So if you look on Instagram, I really don't post on there that frequently. I'm mostly dedicated right now to YouTube, Facebook, and MeWe. And I mean, I really wish this is like a whole side conversation, but talking about creating these new templates, one thing my guides, like my team has told me, is that Facebook has become embedded in our DNA now. It is like part of our tech. And so I really wish people would begin to gravitate over towards like some of these other,
platforms.
Because I feel like I'm like a lone wolf over there, like waiting for my pack to show up. Like it's like crickets, you know?
Okay, message
But
received.
yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for wow. Thank you so much
you.
for all of these informations, everything that you, all
you.
your vibration, your smiles. A last word maybe before we finish. The last word of encouragement, a practice, a tip.
I want to thank you for this opportunity. It's the first time I've been able to like, you know, get out and discuss that. And I think, you know, if anything, to anyone out there, you know, if you're struggling, you know, if you're feeling isolated or alone, it's like right now, especially, you know, my guides just want everyone to know, like, you're loved. And you are not alone. And there are so many, you know, angelic beings and higher dimensional beings, and they're right there with you. And all you have to do is ask. You know, all you have to do is ask. And I mean, I feel them right now.
Oh, I feel them.
And yes, and you can feel them, and that you really are never alone. And reach out to us, like, you know, I think both you and I are both trying to create community here, and we really do sincerely care. You know, that we really do sincerely care about every human being that we're exchanging energy with now. So I guess that's just how I'd like to end it.
Thank you so much. Love manifest. Thank you.
Yes, love, light, and blessings to all of you.
Super. Let's meet again very soon, I hope. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.